All right, perfect. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting open for Tuesday, April 21, 2020. The time is 7:03. So just because we're doing the virtual thing here, what I'd like to do is call out the number if any residents would like to call in. So the number is going to be 978-771-0819. Again, 978-771-0819. So let's jump right into business. So for our schedule items, we actually have no schedule items. So we're going to jump into new business. But so the residence section is right now. So Jason, trick question. Do we have any residents on the line waiting?
We do not have any residents. Nope.
Okay, that's okay. We'll come back. I provided the number, so if residents want to dial in, let's give them some time, and I'll repeat that too, just to be fair to the residents, because this is new for all of us. So, with that being said, why don't we jump into new business? And our first order of business is Children's Mental Health Week request. And what I'd like to do here is pass this over to Ms. Jane Wellman to kind of review it and just give a quick highlight on this request for new business.
Thanks, Jay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Did you want me to read this proclamation here for Children's Mental Health Week that's coming up in May?
We could do that.
What do you want to do? What are you looking for? I think it's important. This is something that comes up every year. It's designated the beginning of May. And it's wonderful, important for folks to keep this in mind, particularly now, particularly with the governor's announcement today that school buildings will be closed until the end of the year and remote learning will be continuing. So we'll have this proclamation that I'll read. Whereas the citizens of Tewksbury value their health and mental health and that of their families, therefore we are proud to support observances such as Children's Mental Health Week. And whereas 17% of children and youth ages 6 to 17 live with a mental health condition, and 50% of all lifetime instances of mental illness begin before age 14, and even some children and youth with the most intense needs, and some who are insured may not receive services. And whereas children and youth with mental health needs in elementary, middle, and high school are more likely to be bullied, absent, suspended, expelled, or fail to graduate, and whereas recognizing the early warning signs of mental health needs and obtaining the necessary support, assistance, and treatment gives children and youth better opportunities to lead full and productive lives at home, in schools, and in their communities. And whereas the involvement and partnership of family members in the assessment and treatment of children and youth is essential to positive outcomes, and our nation's future depends on the health and well-being of its families and their children. And whereas Children's Mental Health Week was developed by families of children with emotional, behavioral, and mental health needs to focus on the needs of their children and families, in celebrating this year's theme, Vision for Health and Happiness, it is fitting to increase public awareness among all Tewksbury citizens of this important cause. 4, our chairman, Jay Kelly, of the Board of Selectmen, does hereby proclaim May 3rd through 9th, 2020 as Children's Mental Health Awareness Week.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wellman. I don't think we need to vote on it. So thank you very much, Wellman, for reading that proclamation. Okay, very good. Okay, next order of business under new business is TJ Callahan's liquor license. So, Mr. Monturi, I'll just highlight it very quickly. There was going to transfer of ownership. Subsequently, there was going to be a transfer of the liquor license. However, evidently, the deal did not go through. So the owner, I can actually call up Ms. Dawn Callahan. Essentially, Ms. Dawn Callahan needs a letter from us with a vote to basically go back to the ABCC and basically kind of rewrite the ship. Is that about right?
Correct, Mr. Chairman. The board should vote to rescind any prior votes to transfer the licenses.
Okay. And just for the residents, you know, we do have all the paperwork is in order. Town council reviewed it, so all the paperwork's in order. So I'd like to call maybe this one just a formality. So with that being said, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to rescind the transfer of license for TJ Callahan's.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a motion and a second. So because this is virtual, let's do a roll call. So let's. I'll try to keep the bat in order here. So how about Mr. Brian Day?
Aye. Let's do that.
Ms. Jane Wellman?
Aye.
Ms. Anne Marie Stronach,
Aye.
and Mr. Mark Kratman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, so unanimous, Miss Melissa. Okay, very good. All right, just moving down to the next order of business. It's postponement of annual town election. So listen, we all know what's going on here with COVID-19. We made a decision as a board to postpone it. In lieu of the current environment, we're going to have to postpone it again. And again, we're going to talk about the annual town election, as well as the next order of business is the annual and special town meetings. So Mr. Montori, I'd like to defer to you here. I know you work very closely with Ms. Denise Graffio, our town clerk here, to try to do our best to put dates as placeholders, because hopefully we can keep these dates, but with the uncertainty, who knows? But what's the recommendation for, let's start with the annual town election, Mr. Montori?
So after talking to the town clerk and just having discussions in general, that having the election moved from May 16th to June 16th would be a good idea, and would give enough time to get through any other issues with the pandemic. And if we need to move it again, it does give us a couple more weeks between then and June 30th if we need to move it one more time. But right now we're feeling June 16th, which is a Tuesday. Usually historically the town elections have been on Saturdays. We're going to try it on a Tuesday under these circumstances. The recommendation would again be June 16th.
How about, let's open up to the board. Any questions from the board members on that particular date? Okay, easy enough. Okay,
Mr. Chairman, was there any reason that the town clerk recommended going to a Tuesday rather than a Saturday in June? Was there a rhyme or reason, or is it just that a lot of elections are on Tuesdays?
There was no real rhyme or reason except just trying to get, push it out as long as we can without causing any issues. And, based on the situation, we just thought a Tuesday would work. Just makes it easier for staff too.
Okay.
We're also not sure what type of staff we'll have on a Saturday to work, because some people may not want to work the election in general because of what's going on. So Tuesday may work better from a staffing standpoint.
Okay. I was just curious. I just want to make sure we have numbers, and as long as we have enough information out there ahead of time and let people have advance notice, I think a Tuesday will work fine. It's a change. That's all. And with every change, we always want to have advance notice out there.
Yeah. The other thing, just if I can jump in, Mr. Chairman, having it on a Tuesday will save money because you're not paying overtime.
I'm all in favor of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Montori. Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, I got a quick question.
Fire away.
How are we communicating this to residents? Is it just on the website, or is there any, is there anything else that we can do to get it out there other than, I guess, TV?
So we'll obviously put it out on the website and through alerts, and we'll have a press release ready to go tomorrow morning to send out to all the news outlets. And the town clerk will inform all of the candidates.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Please.
For the town manager. I know that we can do absentee voting for this election because COVID-19 is a reason that you can do that. So I wonder if we can also, to Mr. Dick's point, put out a code red call message. It's not an emergency alert. They have a community level alert, and let the residents know that they can, how they can request an absentee ballot so that they can vote by mail effectively for this, and what their deadlines are. I know you're going to put that in the press release and so forth, but perhaps a reverse 911 would be a good opportunity as well, since this kind of a moving target we've had so far with this election. Thank you.
Sure. We can try to put something together.
All right, great questions across the board. Very good. All right, with that being said, what's the pleasure of the board?
Make a motion to change, let's see here.
Nate.
So Yeah, pursuant to Section 1 of Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020, and because the state of emergency declared by the governor pursuant to Executive Order 591, declaration of state of emergency to respond to COVID-19, and move that the Board of Selectmen postpone and change the date of the annual town election scheduled for May 16, 2020, to a new date of Tuesday, June 16, 2020.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Let's move into roll call. Mr. Brian Dick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mrs. Jane Wellman,
Aye.
Ms. Stronach,
Aye.
Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, 5-0. All right, Mr. Montori, same deal. It kind of brings us into the annual town election and special town election. So what's the recommendation there?
So the recommendation for the annual town meeting, special town meeting, would be to move it from its current dates of June 1st and June 3rd to June 22nd and June 24th.
Okay, and just checking quickly, I thought those, and I think that's going to be second. Okay, that's the Monday, Wednesday, and that's typical for annual and special town meeting. Okay, very good. Okay, any questions from the board?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
Mr. Montori, if in fact we're still in a situation where how are we going to handle the social distancing? We're going to have this in multiple locations. I'm sure your team has thought about this, but we are going to, when we're developing these new dates, we're also going to be developing social distancing practices. I am imagining that you and your team are working on that.
Yeah, that's correct. I think for both the town election and town meeting, we will be in a situation where we'll need to practice social distancing and have both the election and town meeting in a different way than, or a different approach than we're used to. So in regard to town meeting, most likely will be in multiple locations, with the main location being at the high school gym as we usually have had it, and with satellite locations with associate moderators running the satellite locations with less people so you can have proper social distancing. We'll work with the telemedia department to ensure that we have broadcasts in all locations with live feed and communication back to where the main town meeting is taking place, most likely at the high school gym. But my guess is, and this is early initial discussions, no decisions have been made. We'll need to break this up into several locations to ensure smaller crowds and as much social distancing as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Montori.
Perfect. And I was just going to add, I know Ms. Graffio is a professional, but Mr. Montori, I know you're talking to other neighboring towns, cities and towns. So if you guys come up with good ideas, let's just, what's the saying, borrow, steal, reuse their particular ideas, especially if they have good ones, and likewise for us to share, with our neighboring communities as you go through the process. That's all.
Will do.
Very good. Any other questions from the board? What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to, Mr. Chair, I make that motion to, due to the state of emergency declared by the governor pursuant to Executive Order 591, declaration of state emergency to respond to COVID-19 pursuant to Section 2 of House Number 4598, I move that the Board of Selectmen postpone and change the dates annual and special town meeting from June 1st, 2020 and June 3rd, 2020 to June 22nd, 2020 and June 24th, 2020.
I'll second that.
I have a motion, a second from Mr. Kratman. Mr. Brian Dick, how do you vote? Roll call.
Aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Unanimous, Melissa, 5-0. All right, next order of business is the Board of Registrars appointments. Mr. Montori, I think this is very straightforward. I'm not sure. I actually saw the list. I know this is very routine.
Correct.
I could have missed it.
Yeah, I don't see the list in the packet.
The list was not in the packet.
It was not. Can I vote,
Hold it off.
ask that we table this?
Yeah, hold it off to the next meeting.
Reasonable, perfectly reasonable. I have a motion to table it. Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay, all those, okay, Mr. Brian Dick, how do you vote? Roll call vote. Mr. Brian Dick?
Aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Mr. Mark Kratman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. We'll table that and just pick it up. Piece of cake. Okay, very good. Okay, next order of business, and this is the last order of new business. Why don't I pause there very quickly? Jason, any residents? Do we have any residents on the line?
We have no residents yet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, very good. We're flying through this. All right, it brings us down to the town manager evaluation. Before we get going in the town manager evaluation, what I'd just like to inform the residents is we did have an executive session back in March, and we discussed several things regarding Mr. Montori's contract. And just let the residents know the board already has taken action. We actually took 3 votes in that executive session. One was extending Mr. Montori's contract to 3 years. I do believe it expired this year, in January of 2021. So we did extend that for 3 years. That was the first motion. We also put language in there. We made a motion to put language in there to keep the total compensation package, to pretty much to review every single year Mr. Montori's total compensation package. What happens is sometimes the town managers are very hot commodity, so we want to make sure that we as a board look left, look right, and Mr. Montori's salary and total compensation package is very competitive with that of his neighboring peers. And the third thing that we took a vote on was to increase Mr. Montori's salary of 2.25%. Again, and that's all. That's not above what we gave any of the unions. So we just want to make that very clear that Mr. Montori, it's on par with all the other workers in town to increase the salary for the next year of 2.25% the salary increase. And again, that's year 1 of his new contract. So again, all standard stuff. So at this time, any questions from the board or any questions from the board before we jump in? But I did want to share that to the residents. With the residents, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I just would like to say that I know that the reason for the delay was because when this was scheduled to review his evaluation, I unfortunately was not in a position to attend the meeting. So I just want to thank the board for holding off on the final evaluation in public so that we could do it as a full committee. And I appreciate that courtesy being extended.
No worries. And then, we were going to get on the agenda. Then we all know we live in the, with the virus here. So anyways, we're now's the time to do it. So we're going to jump in. So with that being said, what I'd like to do is we'll go at an individual level. We'll try, typically what we have is a template. We call it matter of fact, it's the town manager evaluation template. So typically as Selectmen, we can kind of fill in the template and then pass that in. So if anyone has filled in the template, what we can do is simply, I was going to say fax or scan or email, if we still fax nowadays, and we can get that on the record. Or what we can do is kind of just talk through the evaluation form. And it has pretty much 6 different sections that we'll be talking about tonight. So if we don't, if any of the Selectmen do not fill that in, that's fine too. But if you have filled that in that template, let's push it to Melissa, and we can get that in on the record. If not, we're just going to talk through his evaluation. So with that being said, what I'd like to start, why don't we start with Mr. Brian Dick, if you don't mind.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. So I'm just I didn't follow the template. I just kind of put down some thoughts. I've had these thoughts since January. I think when we first started talking about evaluating Mr. Montori. But very important night tonight to evaluate our town manager. I've been on the Board of Selectmen for just over 2 years now. I've been fortunate to work alongside of him for those 2 years as well as 6 years on the school committee. So some of the things that stand out with Mr. Montori is he's always reachable. He takes calls from everyone. He's always saying, "Hey, give him my number. I'd be glad to talk to you." So his roll up the sleeves sort of approach is pretty refreshing as a board of selectmen, and I think for the town, he wants to make sure that the facts are out there clear, and that he wants to listen to whether it's a resident or maybe a chairman from another committee. Throughout the many years serving to the public, I've seen him in action, various roles, whether it's a town meeting, board of selectmen meeting, executive session, subcommittee meeting, school committee, just one-on-one. And he always seems to come through on how I'd want our town manager to conduct himself professionally, and always bringing good, solid information to those meetings. So not a waste of time for me. Some of the things that stand out to me is just his collective bargaining techniques. I think he does well, negotiating, saving the town some money, as well as making sure that our employees have all the best benefits that they can get at this time, this day and age of where we are in local government. In the public, I've been fortunate enough to see him on a panel of town managers twice now at the Tewksbury Merrimack Valley Municipal Breakfast. I was looking forward to seeing him this year. I heard he was going to sing the national anthem. No, I was looking forward to seeing him a third time, but that got canceled due to the coronavirus. But I really think, seeing him side by side with the Merrimack Valley town managers, Tewksbury is very lucky to have him in the town manager's seat. I listened to Chelsea, Bereka, Drake, Lowell, Landover, Westford, Tingsboro, all of them sharing, similar strategies, similar, they might have some different things that they're up against, but, Mr. Montori was clear cut, expressed everything great about Tewksbury, as well as some of the challenges that we face. So that's what I like about Mr. Montori is he doesn't shy away from the tough things. Personally, I find him friendly, strong, professional, consistent, fair, open, honest, creative, knowledgeable, and respectful. I believe that, professionally, he has a sound fiscal policy that I think Tewksbury is lucky to have in a town manager. I was able to see our previous town manager work through his fiscal policies, and we're in such a better spot than we were 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So, he runs parallel to the selectmen policy of not, overspending, spending what you don't have, and not sacrificing our future for spending today. He's always conscious of that. So I appreciate that. Just finishing up, retrospective since FY 2010 for me, couple of bullets, rapid fire. He's a good leader. We've had much better services than we were back in 2010. Level service budgets year over year. So I've been very fortunate enough to serve political office and never having to make a cut. So whether it's creativity on hiring positions, whether it's within the schools, working with the superintendent, or just in his departments, there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of thought process that go in there. So there's a lot of creativity, a lot of way to save some money. I appreciate that. He's made a lot of things priority, especially our kids in Tewksbury, our schools in Tewksbury. He's made those a priority where, 10 years ago you wouldn't say that. I think, seeing the DPW being a priority this year within the general budget is a monumental task and creativity on his part. I think the planning that he's passed through 5-10-year plans, those are always efficient and up to date. Standard & Poor's bond rating, A++, 2010 A minus, I think. You can correct me, Mr. Montori, if I'm wrong, to an AA, to an AA++. Is that where we at?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So, I mean, that just shows you the fiscal policies paying off, all of the financial, just the finances in the town and keeping track of that and not jeopardizing the future for today is paying off. So we're able to borrow money at a pretty good rate. Finishing up, fiscally sound when borrowing money. I talked about that. Stabilization fund. He's very conscious about that. I think we are, and we all work together as a team. When we're talking about Mr. Montori, I think he's, it's $5 million in a rainy day fund. If you want to call it that, something that we need for emergencies, always striving for that $6 million mark. So a couple of areas of improvement real quick, and it's not necessarily on him, but, maybe leading his team to kind of think about, obviously what's near and dear to our hearts is to continue to help keep tax increases as low as possible. It really doesn't have to be mentioned. I know that's on everybody's minds, as well as the sewer and water rates. Continue to build more Merrimack Valley communication relationships by, getting out there and getting out of your comfort zone and leading by example in the neighborhood. With our Merrimack Valley partners. A current goal last year, which we always talk about, and Mr. Kratman's always bringing forth, is reinvigorating 38. If there's anything, keep that on the front burner. Curb appeal, like curbstone, sidewalks, paving, something like our neighboring Billerica. And then, the last thing is with the virus. That's probably been weighing on his mind, Mr. Montori, for the upcoming budget that you're going to prepare in the winter, but also you hope that state funding's coming through. That's going to be a different landscape, I think. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for giving me that time to comment on Mr. Montori's work ethic and what he's meant to me in this town. I think we're very lucky to extend that contract 3 more years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. How about Miss Jane Wellman?
Thank you. I prepared my statements in advance. I worked on this back in February, I think, and I updated some of it, and I summarized some of it today because I know we've got kind of a long meeting, but it is fairly lengthy. I want to thank Mr. Dick for his comments. There will be some congruity, I think. I've worked with Mr. Montori since to join the community when I was on the school committee, and as a member of numerous committees as moderator, I now have the pleasure of working with him as a selectman. He's been helpful, encouraging, informative, and welcoming. I'm impressed with his work, his managerial organization and oversight, his staff development, and his dedication overall to Tewksbury. Mr. Montori is an excellent manager, bringing forward plans, alternatives, and options for the board and the public's consideration. When some projects became stalled, he works to find ways to bring them back on track, often at greater advantage to the town and the taxpayer. His policies are up to date. He offers creative solutions to problems, and usually those also save money to our residents. Mr. Montori delivers an updated budget summary, monitoring document to the Selectmen weekly, and addresses his concerns as they arise and any unusual matters that drive outliers. He's methodical in his budget development and takes a pragmatic, conservative approach that ensures a balanced budget without deficits. He's been able to take debt off the tax rolls. He's been able to bring in a full community telemedia service with funding from our cable companies. He's worked this year to fund the design process for a joint DPW and school facilities building, partnering with the school department and doing all of that, Mr. Dick said earlier, inside the levy limit. He has done an excellent job on our bond rating, and that work pays dividends this year in borrowing rates exceptionally favorable to the town. Mr. Montori is a collaborative staff manager, encouraging professional development, strategic initiatives, and support for his staff. His consistent leadership helps create esprit de corps across departments and engenders a positive work environment. Mr. Montori does an exceptional job with his public presentations, his responsiveness to resident issues raised at meetings, and working interdepartmentally to drive success across multiple domains. I've enjoyed seeing the increased use of social media by town staff to promote local issues and would like to see a coordinated approach to push information out to residents utilizing all tools in the toolkit, and perhaps adding a few, adopting an approach of reaching all residents in all the ways we can with all the tools that we have. I think that Mr. Montori's presence at community events is welcome and can be tremendously insightful. He's entirely committed to the town and attends night meetings often, working collaboratively to usher projects through to completion. I am impressed and appreciative of his regular meetings with stakeholders affected by significant projects such as the elementary school project and the culvert work on Pinnacle Street. Some of the qualities that make Mr. Montori such a strong and capable manager are his integrity, equanimity, and professionalism. He often brings new initiatives to town, with Tewksbury leading the way before other communities. He's pragmatic with projects and bold with his approach, and he's widely respected by his colleagues across the Commonwealth and has put Tewksbury on strong financial footing, improved our infrastructure, prioritized our school funding, and maintained a strong vision for the Tewksbury of the future. While my comments were written before the advent of this pandemic we are now living through, I would like to add that Mr. Montori's proactive responsiveness has been always mindful of putting residents' and employees' health and well-being first and foremost. He's made changes to town hall staffing models, worked with department heads to ensure safe staffing practices across departments, and ensured that our first responders had access to the PPE they need to continue to service the residents of this community at a time of significant anxiety. Been tremendously responsive, as always, engaging with his colleagues, staff, and the board on construction projects, finance, budget impacts, COVID-19 policies, and more. And his communication has been thorough, pushing information out to the community, proactive, and insightful. We are at a point where we have a stable financial footing as we enter what could be a long-term crisis. And having served this town at the time of the Great Recession, like many of my colleagues, I'm encouraged that we are in much better shape now than we were then. And this is due to strong financial management over the course of time in his tenure here in town. I appreciate his collaborative nature of his work with the board and residents. And I look forward to his continued development of his goals that he brought up earlier this year, particularly looking at senior tax relief, sidewalks, transportation, and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wellman. Very good. All right, how about Ms. Stronach?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did complete my form because I do want this to go into his record in the event someday someone actually wants to look at his record anyway. The criteria are management skills. And as people know, I try to base my evaluations based on evidence. And I have to say that in terms of his management skills, he's probably one of the most organized people I know. You go into his office, it is impeccable, and you can ask him anything and he can go on his computer and find it in a matter of seconds, which is a trait that I truly admire. His weekly updates are on project meetings that he gives to all board members show an equitable approach to his work, and then he emails us daily as necessary, especially within this COVID-19. I think our emails are multiply daily, and I know that that takes time away from other things that he'd probably preferably be doing. I also know that it is very hard for Mr. Montori in terms of his management to sit there and hear such accolades put to him, because he truly is a collaborative approach. He is an excellent listener and wants to stretch his workforce. And that is a way that he does that, is by listening and empowering them. I think that falls into both his management and his leadership. The next is budget preparation and his administration. A lot of things that I just talked about fall into that. I'm not going to go into the comments. I think both of my colleagues before me spoke very, very well about his strengths within his budget. I've outlined some of those as well. What I would say is I think that this is an area that he truly enjoys. Other people may not appreciate it as much as he does, but he really likes digging into it. And I don't think anything brings him more joy than when he gets to come to us and tell us, I found a way to take $50 off the taxes. I found a way for us not to increase the water rates this year. I found a way to refinance and cut our debt. So long range, we're going to be in a better position. And he has done that in the multiple different ways throughout the years that I've been sitting on this board. The third one is the direction and supervision of the department. Again, he is a solid leader who empowers his department heads. None of this has been more evident than following this crisis. We unfortunately, we were left with a vacancy at the police department. He had someone that was ready to go step in. He supported them, the work that the fire chief, the senior center, the Board of Health, the health department nurses, the acting police, they could not have been able to do those things if they did not feel empowered enough to take the risks that it needs in a situation like this and to feel supported by a manager. So I just want to thank him for that, because it has been incredible the way that our staff, department heads have stepped up to this. Town clerk, we could go on and on. The next one is organizational skills, and I think I just spoke to that in terms of that, and the way he provides the material to us in a timely manner. If in the event something is not provided us into a timely manner and something is on our desk prior to our meeting, he makes it so that we do not have to act on that, so that we can discuss it, have all the data in front of us, and then make a decision where we have had the time to absorb the data, rather than putting us under a gun to say, we got to act on this tonight. And I appreciate that. Community relations, I think, is an area that all of us need to grow in. And I think that he has done an exceptional job of late putting himself out there. And there's always growth potential, and that's for everybody in that field. In terms of his personal qualities, which is the last one, his personal qualities, I am so proud that he is our town manager. His ethics and his integrity are second to none, in my opinion, in terms of town managers. He never tries to sweep things under the rug. He is extremely proactive and has difficult conversations when need be, which I think is a skill that is utilized appropriately. I guess in closing, I just want to say that there are three things that I think of when I think of Mr. Montori. It's high standards, his ability to execute and be flexible at the same time, which is evident by the town projects that we're dealing with right now, the fire station, the school, the DPW. And he is well respected by not only his own peers, but by the community and by every board in this town, I think. The last thing I would like to say is that I think Richard's been with us 12 years now, and he continues to be excited about the work that he's done. A lot of times when people are in a job for 12 years, they're not as excited. He is constantly thinking of ways to make this town a better place to live in. The DPW is an excellent example of that. And at the same time, he attends to the tedious tasks that are easily put off. And I refer to the Board of Selectmen Policy and Procedure Manual, which is a credible document that he finished this year. And we're lucky to have such an updated document for us to look at. And I guess what I would say is that there's always room to make this town better in lowering taxes. Obviously, everybody's hitting that home, and next year we're going to face a lot of challenges when it comes to taxes due to state funding and all the like, but I can tell you that we are in a better position as far as the residents are concerned, and I'm very grateful that the town manager has decided to accept our offer to stay, because I do know he's been courted by other towns, and I appreciate that. Tewksbury is near and dear to his heart. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Very good. How about Mr. Mark Kratman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also thank you for letting me go last. This thing, as we do their evaluation, this is, luckily for me, this has been my 5th year in a row being able to give Richard an evaluation. I've filled it out most of the years. I didn't do it this year because nothing's really changed on the form other than my unbelievable appreciation for what Richard does day after day. We are going to face some real situations and crises that we're going to have to deal with what's going on in our community. And just thinking about it, we are so lucky to have a man like Richard Montori as our town manager. I know a lot of the surrounding towns believe they have a good town manager, but I can say for sure, we have the best town manager in Massachusetts. He is always prepared. He's always ready. And I've had a number of people come up to me and say, why are we holding on to money? Why are we get a rainy day fund of this high? Why do we have this? Why aren't we doing that? And Richard has always stayed steady of what he's doing, being prepared in case something happened. Well, it's happening. Things are changing. We see what's happening in the Commonwealth, and we have somebody that has us prepared. And we are so lucky to have a man like Richard as our town manager. We're going to need a strong leader. We're going to need everybody to roll up their sleeves and get to work in our town. And I could not think of a better man that I would want to be my town manager than Richard Montori. He's just prepared, he's ready, and he's what we need for our community. We're just lucky to have him, and I cannot stress that enough. I know many town managers, I know many mayors, I know a lot of people in this Commonwealth, and I wouldn't trade him for one. And that's just short and sweet. We have the best town manager in the Commonwealth. So that's how I'm going to end it.
Very good, Mr. Kratman. Thank you. Okay, and I think I scratched out a lot. I always say I don't want to waste words, so let's not try to. So, Ms. Stronach mentioned about the level of organization Mr. Montori has. I asked Richard for a sentence. He gives me a paragraph. And just for the residents, Richard sends us weekly, we call them Board of Selectmen reports. And I cannot tell you how thorough those reports are. And, we read the reports, everything is going on of last week and kind of future looking. And if we have a question, we pick up the phone and Mr. Montori will elaborate. But his level of organization is second to none. The big thing here is budget preparation and administration. Everyone hit on the budget. Everyone hit on Mr. Montori's ability to pull together the budget, and Mr. Kratman just said it. I mean, that's a huge strength. He does his homework, and then he gets back to us in no time flat. We typically have 1,000 questions around the budget, every single line item. I know the Finance Committee does the same. Now, I will say, this is where I think a wise and a beautiful Tewksbury resident said, this might be a little controversial, but we're not, Tewksbury's not affluent. And that's no disrespect for the other communities that may be affluent, but we're just hardworking people, family-orientated, plain and simple. And to Mr. Kratman's point and to all our points, it's going to be a very tough and challenging year. So I want to ask Mr. Montori to really dig in. And typically him and I will lock horns, but that's fine. Me and my wife argue, and 2 seconds later, we're fine. So I know we all press Mr. Montori on the budget because until it's, taxes are negative, we should have those conversations, as representatives and leaders in the community. So, Mr. Montori, I know we press you very hard in that area. And a lot of folks don't see the good work you do when it comes to debt exclusion and how much money you save the community. But, we always got to press you on that because times are going to be, it's going to be a very challenging year in front of us, and who knows, maybe, a few years here. So my expectation is simple. I'm going to say wants. Mr. Montori hates the word wants, but needs. We always ask for a business justification from the Angels. Because it's going to be a tough little road ahead of us. And you know that, Mr. Montori. I know your department heads know that. It's not easy to work with, but that's the situation we're in. Not only is Tewksbury, but I think every community, town, city on this planet is going to be in the same exact boat. So, we have to button up. So, unbelievable job when it comes to the budget, but we can always do better. As far as direction and supervision, I often say Richard is the Bill Belichick of town managers. You run a tight ship, and all your department heads run a tight ship, and that's a reflection of you when it just goes right down, at the individual level. So I can't thank you enough. I always say Mr. Montori accepts fully accountable and fully responsible. Commendable qualities of a leader, and I do appreciate that. I think someone already said the standards that you hold folks to very, very high standards, and I can play in the executive world outside of the politics, and I can tell you, you would fit into corporate America very well, with your level of execution, your level of professionalism. So, good stuff. As far as I think I'm almost, as far as community relationships, this is where, again, I'll be a little bit controversial. Richard, I know we try to push you out there, but I always say it's a politician's job to shake hands and kiss babies. I mean, that's the quote of the night. But because we're out there, we're at the Moolah's, we're at Donna's Donuts, we're interacting with residents day in and day out. So I truly feel like we, or just myself as a selectman, should kind of be that face. And trust me, just to the residents, we always bring it back to Mr. Montori. So whatever feedback you give us, whether it's on the phone or, like I said, bump it into us wherever, we bring that back. So selfish, like they'll do kind of push Richard behind the curtains, but I know some folks kind of want to pull Richard outside of those curtains, but he does a good job when he is outside of those curtains. And last but not least, personal qualities. Listen, we all hit on it. Mr. Montori's always on, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I can tell you, he's always on, and it just. Even though Rich and I can go back and forth, at the end of the day, we shake hands and we say on to the next. So as much as we did a lot of accolades tonight, and all rightfully and all deservingly so, I can just tell the residents that me as an individual and collectively as selectmen, it's our job, to push Richard and hold him to our high standards. And when we do have like I said, a debate or a conversation, at the end of the day, we shake hands and we say on to the next. And that's another commendable attribute of a leader, and I thank you for that, Richard, because sometimes folks don't see all that type of stuff, but we push each other as individuals and as a collective board, and I do believe the town is better for that. So in a nutshell, that's all I had. A lot of it would be kind of a duplication. So, Mr. Montori, I'll pause there. Any feedback for the board? I know that was tough to take because I know the type of guy that you are.
So first of all, I want to thank all the members for the review tonight. I'm very grateful for your kind words. And as I've said in the past, and I will say it again tonight, I've been very fortunate to work with some excellent boards of selectmen. From the first board I started working with to this board today. Our success has been because I have worked with some outstanding public officials, and the 5 of you are included in that. I've been fortunate enough to have excellent working relationship with the Finance Committee and good members on that committee, same with the school committee, as well as other elected boards and commissions in the community. But most of all, I am extremely fortunate to have what I feel are the best department heads that any town has in any community in this state. Without them, we would not be having near the success we have had over the last 10 years. So I appreciate all the work and dedication that they have to do in their jobs, and they've made my job easier. So any success that's been mentioned tonight truly is their success and the Board of Selectmen's success. So thank you again for your kind words, but this has been a team effort for 10 years, and it continues that way. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Speaking of Mr. Montori, it's time for the town manager section. Mr. Montori.
All right. So just quickly, COVID-19 update. Staffing and operations for town offices continues at the same level they have been over the last few weeks. Each office has some level of staffing to be responsive to the essential services to residents. We have not diminished any of that at all, and we'll continue at that level for at least the next couple of weeks. We are having discussions on how we would start to integrate back into normal operations in each of our offices, starting off with bringing back more staff for more days, staying closed to the public for a period of time until we feel we're comfortable to open up to the public. But we've already started those discussions internally, and we'll continue those discussions over the next couple of weeks. As the board knows, the numbers in the community that have not been updated for at least within the last week, they'll probably be updated tomorrow. 168 cases, 146 of those are active, 22 are recovered. Again, we should see those numbers updated tomorrow. An important note, at the last meeting, we talked about the process of tracing positive cases within the community, and the process that the town nurse, as well as other nurses that are helping her, go through and contacting positive cases and tracing back their contacts and the process that they go through. By the end of this week, that process will be taken over by the Commonwealth in a collaboration of the state of Massachusetts, higher education, and the private sector. There will be a COVID response team that will be taking on that task of tracing back positive cases for all communities. And one thing that I want to mention that's important, there's been a lot of information on websites through Twitter and other social media or emails telling people that they are a contact or have a positive test, and there's a lot of scams out there. What's going to happen over the next, starting at the end of this week and going forward, if you are going to be contacted as a possible contact or as a positive case, you will receive a call. It'll not be by an email or a text, it'll be a phone call, and the caller ID will be MASS under MA, and it will say COVID team. If you receive that call, that is a legitimate call. You should answer it. You should talk to the person that calls you. Again, that's MASS, which is MA, and then COVID team. We'll be sending that information out starting tomorrow to all the residents through social media to let them know that that will take place. So that's important to know. So the tracing of positive testing will change to a state level. Just a couple of other things. I know there's been a lot of talk regarding the state hospital and the number of cases, both for patients and employees up at the state hospital. I just wanted to inform the board that the state hospital is going to be retesting all of its patients starting this week. They're going to be testing all of its employees. That started today, tomorrow, and will go into Thursday. They're going to retrain all of the employees up there in regard to personal protective equipment. And as I mentioned to the board previously, the Army Corps medic staffing is at the hospital to help supplement staffing that is out on positive cases, and they will start work this Friday and Saturday. Other than that, that's an update on where we stand. We have no major issues on our end with any positive cases with our employees. We seem to be doing well with our personal protective equipment, and department heads continue to do an outstanding job making sure we're providing essential services to the residents.
Any questions from the board?
I guess I have a quick question. Mr. Montori, so, the board did its order of, not allowing anybody to go into certain businesses or whatever. There was a couple of businesses early on that we had to say shut down, basically. We're in line with the state. Is that how that works? So when the state, I guess, Governor Baker says it's all right to start to open up some of our restaurants, bars, or whatever, how does that work?
So everything we've done so far really has been aligned with what the administration's been doing at the state level. So I would expect that as things unwind or start to open up, we'll follow the same type of approach. So we'll take our cue and our guidance from the governor in what he decides and how he decides to open things back up, and we'll go with that route.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mr. Montori?
I have a comment.
Please.
So this comment's relative to what's going on at the state hospital. I just wanted to put it on the record. That today I'm grateful that we have the Army Medical Corps at the state hospital providing critical staffing aid and supporting our dedicated staff in fulfilling the patient care needed by the patients at Tewksbury Hospital. But to that end, I'm also disappointed that the level of spread among patients and staff at the hospital was not communicated to our town leadership directly, not from the hospital to our fire chief and our town manager. And I think it's incumbent upon hospital leadership to communicate with the town proactively, as it is our resident-funded public safety departments and our EMS-trained firefighters specifically that are going to respond and transport patients requiring more skilled care and expose themselves to this virus and putting themselves and their shift members at risk. I'm grateful that our legislative delegation was responsive to my requests and those of others over the weekend, but I don't think it should have come to that. I know that our fire chief and our health department and other staff have been relentless in seeking updates from other nursing homes and assisted living facilities, and it's our responsibility to protect our first responders as best we can by giving them the information, the tools that they need to safely respond. And so I look forward to renewed cooperation from the state hospital in communicating with us in the future. Thank you.
Well said.
Very well said. Thank you. So that's all I have for the update on the COVID.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more items, Mr. Montori.
Yep, moving on. So I gave the board updates to the Board of Selectmen liquor license policy that they adopted over the last year. The changes that I provided the board, there's only a couple and they're pretty straightforward. They were provided to me by senior town council. And we made these updates after reviewing a couple of liquor licenses over the last 6 months. And the first has to do with 11.11, additional provisions within the Board of Selectmen's liquor license policy. And under item A of 11.11, he added the words, the way it reads right now is the selectmen do not approve the pledge of stock in a licensee's corporation. And what senior town council added was the wording or the pledge of the liquor license. And this is something that the Board of Selectmen have done consistently for well over they've done it long before I was town manager, and they've done it since I've been town manager. It's just something that should have been in the policy in the beginning. It wasn't. So I'd ask the board to adopt that change. And then the only other one was under special licenses, D under 11.13, where it says, currently it says all special licenses shall only be issued to a nonprofit organization. He wanted to add all alcohol special licenses shall only be issued to a nonprofit organization to be consistent with the rules and regs of the ABCC. And that's it.
Questions from the board, comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I just have one comment that I wholeheartedly support and agree with this, as we do get new one-day liquor license. So I think that this will be tremendously helpful to the board moving forward. So I want to thank the town manager and the town council for their work on that. And with that, if there were no other comments, I would like to motion to approve the recommendation.
For motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? right, let's take a roll call vote. Mr. Brian Dick,
Aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman,
Aye.
Ms. Stronach,
Aye.
Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, Melissa, 5-0. All right, Mr. Montori, I think we have a few more orders of business.
Couple more things. So, senior town council invoice for February 2020 in the amount of $13,389.70. I would recommend approval.
So moved.
I have a motion for Mr. Kratman. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Wellman. Mr. Brian Dick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Mr. Kratman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I have a senior town council invoice, a town council invoice for March 16th, 2020, through 1st, 2020, in the amount of $3,102. I now recommend approval.
So moved.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Brian Dick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Wellman?
Aye.
Ms. Stronach?
Aye.
Mr. Kratman?
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, unanimous. Ms. Melissa. All right, Mr. Montori, I think are you good on your end, Mr. Montori?
Just one quick thing, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be sending out to the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee the third quarter revenue reports on how the town's revenue collections were through 3 quarters, as well as expenditures through 3 quarters, and an analysis on how we're doing. Everything that we've looked at so far looks good. We're ahead of where we need to be in regard to our projections. Also starting to look at revenues through now, through today, going to the end of the fiscal year. And I know people are concerned about where our revenue will be, and it looks like we should be okay with our revenues. We'll be able to meet our projections for our local receipts, as well as our water and sewer rates. We have not heard that the state's going to make any cuts to local aid this year, so we anticipate receiving our full allotment of state aid. So we should be in good shape with our revenues between now and the end of the fiscal year. Tax bills aren't due until June 1st, so we'll have a better idea over the next few weeks how that collection's going. But just in anticipation of possible problems we could have, because each week this pandemic goes on, we may see more constraints on the economy. I directed the department heads today, and I'll follow it up in writing with them, that we're going to slow down our spending, only spending money on essential items between now and the end of the fiscal year, essential overtime needed regarding this pandemic, but really start, I don't want to call it a spending freeze, but a spending slowdown of only essential items as we come between now and the end of the fiscal year. I've also indicated to the department heads that because there's so many unknowns going into next year's budget, I'm not anticipating much change to the budget that we've already presented, but I'm asking department heads to have a slow spending process coming when the fiscal year starts. Again, only on essential items. We're not going to spend money on capital outlay coming into July 1. We'll hold off on that until we get a better handle on where we are financially. I think we'll be in good shape. I think we'll be able to adjust to any issues that come up, but we're just going to take some more extra precaution in regard to finance. That's it.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Montori. All right. I think we only have a few meeting minutes that are going to be processed pretty soon. I think Ms. Wellman's way ahead of the game, so we'll skip that and we'll go right to let's do board member reports before we adjourn. So how about Mr. Brian Dick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This week I was as the chairman of the athletic field subcommittee. I was fortunate enough to have a phone call with Mr. Peter Collins, just trying to get an idea, a refresher from the past meeting that they had last Thursday on the elementary building project and scheduling and how that field complex kind of filters in. And it was Mr. Montori attended to, it was 3 of us on a phone call, and we just talked about some of the concerns I had that our subcommittee has, and we were reassured that, you know, sometime around May 4th, that we're going to have a better understanding of the schedule, but feels confident that September 1st, 2021, everything that's being promised in that athletic area was going to be delivered. But he'll know more on May 4th, and that would probably spawn a subcommittee meeting from us with that communication from him and his team. And then on that note, we were also discussing temporary accommodations for the football team that lost a home. And those discussions are ongoing. Nothing's finalized, but those thoughts of how to move that team to a place where they'll have a home for the next 2 years, and how they're going to play games on the road and work with the athletic department, things like that, how they're going to practice. So that stuff's being discussed. And when I know more, I'll give you some updates. That's about it.
Okay, thank you. How about Ms. Wallace?
Hi. We're really right now. So we had NIMCOG last week on a Zoom call similar to this one. And one of the things we talked about was the draft of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. Some folks may remember a packed meeting actually at the library. I think it was in January or early February, where someone from NIMCOG came and talked about this this plan that's coming up for the Greater Lowell region. So that draft plan is complete. Richard, I don't know if we can get that up on the town website, kind of linked to NIMCOG, but I'll deal with you, work on that offline, so residents can look at the draft. As a result of the CARES Act, the Economic Development Association is going to be receiving $1.5 billion in funding over the next 2.5 years for economic development activities in our region. So there's going to be some revisions made and have been made to that document. So there's some interesting stuff in there for future planning and development for businesses and regional planning agencies and towns to pay attention to. So we want to kind of get that up there. And we talked about that last week, and that's the primary thing that we've been working on. Beautification is working on some ways to recognize different businesses in town that it's really challenging right now. We can't do a cleanup day right now, but we can certainly clean up in our areas, in our neighborhoods safely. So I don't really have much more than that, except for folks to stay safe and continue to work with our legislators to get the word out on public safety issues regarding this virus. So thank you.
Very good, thank you. How about Ms. Stronach?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I promised the last meeting, the elementary building committee met. I'm happy to hear the updates from Mr. Dick's committee. I'm glad to see that that's working in the right direction. Same thing with the building committee. We have gone before planning. We're still waiting for a continuance from them. And we are getting ready to submit the 90% construction completion documents to the MSBA. Stormwater continues to be an area that we are committed to and very focused on. And we have, I believe the design has submitted a new plan that is being peer reviewed, as well as our town engineers looking at that. Did I state that correctly, Mr. Town Manager?
You did.
So I just want everybody to know that continues to be an area that we are going to make sure that we have right, that has potentially put a little bit of kink in the armor, but we want to get this right from the beginning. And with that said, the possibility of this opening in September of 22 could be not happening, but we believe that the extra time to spend to get this right is going to pay off dividends in the long run. So we are being cautiously optimistic about that, but I do want people to know that the potential day of opening may not be a September date, probably more like a January date, but I think it's important to get it right. The events committee has not been meeting given the social distancing policies, but there's lots of ways for us to continue to reach out to people and stay connected. And with that said, I would just like to say regarding the governor's no call till the end of the school year for school, I think that it's tremendously important that we support parents during this time. And I don't know how best we could do that, but I'll be looking for ways to do that. I want to remind parents that remote learning is not a substitute for online education. It's not the same thing as online education. And, you know, you were not trained to be teachers, and now we're asking you to be teachers, and we totally appreciate the support and the work that you have to do with your students, because I think it's very stressful. And I just want to applaud all the parents out there for getting through the last month, and look forward to supporting those efforts in any way we can to do that with the school committee members. I'd be interested in that. And with that, I have nothing else to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Kratman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although we have not had a meeting, I have had conversations with other members and executive director of the Lowell Regional Transit Board. They're taking all the precautions, putting all safety measures into effect to make sure that people that are using the LRTA and traveling to our community, the buses are being cleaned. They're using every precaution that they possibly can to make sure that people that are using the public transit that are going through Tewksbury and going to the businesses in the Tewksbury State Hospital and every other place that may be going in our community, that they're keeping them clean. They're working very hard to keep, though they're running a limited schedule, they are working to make sure that it continues. So there is public transportation continuing through our community. We did do away with Sunday service. We had a Sunday service that was ongoing, but with seeing the limited travel, it wasn't being well utilized. So for the meantime, they've discontinued that until hopefully we get back to normal. Economic development, this is going to be very important. I plan on getting our team together, and I want to thank Jason and Brian for all the work with the cable advisory, and we're going to be using them to help us do this online meetings that we can do, get everybody working. We're going to really need to roll up our sleeves and come up with some ideas of what we can do in this community for economic development and get everybody back to work and get businesses and restaurants and help them in any way possible. So there's no idea off the table. We're going to really have to start brainstorming. We get some real work to do in front of us, and we look forward to it. But that's all I have right now, but we're all looking forward to getting to work and helping everybody in the community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kratman. And I don't have anything on my end. Same deal. My two committees have not met, so hopefully we'll meet soon. If this lingers on, we're going to do the same thing here, virtual meetings. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for the updates. That's all. Again, that's all I had on my end. So with that being said, do I have a motion to adjourn? Actually, timeout. I'm sorry, Jason. Do we have any residents?
No calls, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. With that said, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, Mr. Brian Dick.
Aye.
Ms. Jane Wellman.
Aye.
Ms. Stronach.
Aye.
Mr. Kratman.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.